Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Today we will be continuing the same thing from where we have left, the control of shrinkage and distortion of the welded joint. And I think we have discussed briefly that how this shrinkage and distortion happens over there during the welded connection, welded joints, or during the process of welding. Because that is because of due to the molten weld bed that is being depositing, it is going to cool down slowly, or the what is the thermal annealing process, and which attempts to develop a certain shrinkage, and that shrinkage could be developed through the longitudinal process as well as in the transverse directions. So the longitudinal process or the longitudinal shrinkage which is being developing due to this cooling down or thermal annealing, that can cause the cylinder plates to buckle, which we have already been discussed, and it has been typically shown over there how a particular groove welding is being distorted over there. And if the weld is an eccentric to the effective centroid of the resisting structure or the member, then it will result over a blowing of the plates. Okay, so this distortion, typically naming as the longitudinal distortion, are of limited, very limited importance in the connection design. Whereas in the transverse shrinkage produces both angular and out of plane distortion, and due to the angular or out of plane distortion, there is a significant amount of damage happens over there in the connection itself or the joints where the welding has been taken place. So these particular shrinkage, either the longitudinal or the transverse shrinkage, could be minimized by putting up some restriction or incorporating certain things over there. So what are the requirement of that to reduce the shrinkage? You can utilize the minimum weld material. For the groove weld, use the minimum root opening that is the necessary for making the or to inserting the electrodes. And also you need not to be, or it is advisable that not to cover the weld. There are a few other limitations or there are a few other points are there to reduce the shrinkage forces. For example, you can utilize only the few passes to complete this weld. You can utilize the proper edge penetration and fit up. You can utilize the intermittent welds, and you can also utilize or allow the shrinkage in certain extent. So prior to the welding, what we can do is we can preset the element so that after welding and its associated distortion, the geometry is correct. So you can make the pre-stressing over there. Okay, and also you can use the pre-bending of the material or the connecting members. So most likely using all these certain features, we can control over the shrinkage and distortion. In the next, we'll be coming towards what are the different welding symbols. These are the standard welding symbols that are being utilized or used on the drawing for the different types of structural GA or the general alignment drawing preparations. Okay. Just let me one moment. I'm just okay. So these symbols save a lot of spaces in descriptive notes. That is the utilization of making the this kind of symbol, because every time we need not provide to give the description like whether it is a fillet weld or whether it is a groove weld or whether it is a butt weld. Instead of that, we can utilize these typical standard symbols to make our drawing to be more attractive and to be more utilized in from the context of the design executions. Okay. So next thing that I am just trying to highlight over there, the specification of the different welding. You might have seen or you are basically seeing for the first time over here that here there are many different desirable conditions are there, welding conditions, or undesirable and non-acceptable conditions are there. Desirable and non-desirable condition or non-acceptable conditions are primarily saying, or what is the physical relevance over there? Physical relevance is that not to include or not to bring the stress concentration features over there during the welding process. So the first one is the process which is being provided over here. That is the most desirable way to make the welding. Second one is little bit about of desired acceptable form, in the sense the few portion above the top of that welding material is going to the above of the plate, It indicates the full throat thickness which is being specified in the design regulation. And obviously this kind of welding is not at all acceptable in either in the theoretical sense or in the practical sense. So the size, when we talk about the specification, the size of this normal fillet weld generally is taken as the minimum leg size of the weld. For deep penetration weld, where the depth of the penetration is beyond the root run is 2.4 millimeter, the size of the fillet weld in that particular context is minimum leg size plus 2.4 millimeter. Similarly, there would be the minimum weld size, and the minimum weld size also depends on that what is the connecting member, what is the thickness of the connecting member. If the thickness of the, let's say, thickness of the thicker part of the connecting member is up to 10 mm, then you can utilize minimum 3 mm thickness of the weld. Likewise, if you have up to 6 mm, if you have up to 5 mm, if you have the plate thickness of 6 to 10 mm, so there are lots of different permutations and combinations on there, which is already been specified in our Indian standard IS 800 2007. So we have to be very carefully looking into those particular specifications while making the practical design. Okay, now why do we require this minimum weld size? This minimum weld size basically required in order to ensure fusion, in order to minimize the distortion, and in order to avoid the risk of cracking. So these are three different things that is being required for utilizing or for making the minimum weld size. Okay, so I'm just repeating again. Why do we require the minimum weld size? Minimum weld size is required to ensure, the fusion, first point, to ensure the fusion. Second point is to minimize the distortion. And third one is to avoid to develop the crack, or to avoid the risk of cracking. Okay, so these are the three primary physical requirement is there in order to make the minimum weld size. And it is also being postulated in the IS 800 2007 and IS 816, which provides the minimum weld size specifications. Now, if there is any minimum weld size, then there must be a maximum weld size also. So before going to the maximum weld size, let us take a particular example. For example, a 300 mm. For example, a 300 mm long weld of 5 mm thick. Two cases are there, case 1 and case 2, a 150 mm long weld of 10 mm thick. Apparently it would be looking the same. 300 mm long weld of 5 mm thick and 150 mm long weld of 10 mm thick. Okay, so which one to be chosen? Both are giving the same strength. Both are giving the same strength, but there is one particular problem. What is the problem? The volume of the 10 mm weld, I have been calculated over here, and it is also been there in many literature. For 10 mm weld, the volume of that weld becomes 7500 millimeter cube. And for a 5 mm thick weld, it is having almost the half, 37550 mm cube. So depending on that, you need to choose that how much amount of your weld, you see, the volume is directly proportional to the weight. So your weight is basically increasing as you are increasing the volume of the weld. So you have to be definitely choose over there, up and there, because both the things are giving the same strength. Okay, so now the maximum size of the fillet of the weld along the edges. So when we talk about the maximum size of the fillet weld along the edges, then if the thickness of the adjoining member is 6 mm thick, the maximum size is equal to the thickness of the end plate. Maximum size of the or the maximum size of the weld is the thickness of the plate itself. Now when the fillet weld is applied to the square edge, let's say for example at here, when the fillet weld is applied to a square edge, then as per the code IS 800, there is some certain specifications that you have to keep your welding in such a way that from the top 1.5 millimeter, the weld would start. It should not be that entire covering up entire thing, covering up the entire portion up to this portion, in order to reduce the stress concentrations over there. Because why the stress concentration would come? You know already that if the things are becoming the cooling down, a molten state of the liquid is cooling down, it actually takes into account more amount of inward stress or inward strength or the forces. That inward forces or inward stresses are becoming very significant whenever there is a sharp variation in the geometry. This is a sharp variation in the geometry. So thereby a particular concentration of the stresses would develop at the corner itself, and it will start forming the crack. Okay. Similarly, if you have a round edge, then the similar kind of specification are also been specified over here, that at a distance of t/4 from the top of that particular T or particular plate, you have to start your welding. Same philosophy can also be applied over here. Okay. Same philosophy can be applied over here. Then in the next, what is the minimum effective length of the fillet weld and the maximum length of the fillet weld that can be provided? Again, it would depend on whether the member is under the tension or whether the member is under the compression. Okay. So when we place a fillet weld along the weld, when we place the fillet weld through the welder tries to build up the weld to its full dimension from the beginning. Okay, there is always a straight tempering off where the weld starts and where it ends. Therefore, the minimum length of 4 times of the size of the weld is been specified. 4 times of the size, even though the notation is bit different. Capital D has been provided over here. Minimum distance of 4 times the size of the leg size of the weld is been specified over here. Now everywhere you need to make an end return. End return means, suppose for example, if I have this kind of a sharp corner, then the welding would start from here itself. It should not stop here directly at here. It should go little bit amount of over here also on the other direction. So that is called an end return. Why to provide the end return? End return to be provided over here in order to minimize again the stress concentrations. Okay, that I can show you in the next figure that the stress distribution of the welded joint, which is typically looking like a very complex in nature and non-uniform in nature. Okay, so you can find it over here that the actual variation of the shear stress in the weld from point A to point B, on the length of the weld, there is this is called an actual variation. This is called an actual variation, which is also the ratio of the width of the plate which is being joined. That is why it has been saying that there is a serious amount of stress concentration at the edge of the plate. Serious amount of stress concentration at the edge of the plate, both the side, at here also. In order to control it, the length of the longitudinal side fillet weld should not be less than the width of the plate. Should not be less than the width of the plate. Okay, it should be always greater than the width of the plate. Okay. The uneven, again, by referring to the previous figure, we can say that the uneven stress distribution increases as the width of the plate increases. That you can easily see. Uneven distribution of the stress increases as the width of the plate increases. Width of the plate increases. And that is the reason, for this particular reason, the perpendicular distance between longitudinal fillet weld is limited to 16 times. Limited to 16 times if it is in tension. 16 times of what? 16 times of the thickness of the thinner plate which is being joined. Now, if the plate is wider than this limit, then what would happen? You may need to provide slot weld or the plug weld. But slot weld and plug weld are very rarely utilized, less than 1% or 2% cases. So typically we can avoid those kind of things. And code is also being saying that if the limit exceeds, but in general practical scenario, we tend to provide or keep it within this particular limit itself, so that we should not have any violation of the codal provisions. Right. Now, there is also certain things that I can tell you over here. That is the overlapping. Overlapping means when the overlapping comes when the lap joint comes over there. The overlap of the plate, two plates, which is to be connected, and let's say it is being connecting through the fillet weld in a lap joint kind of situation. In that particular context, this overlap should not be less than the 4 times of the thickness of the thinner part. 4 times of the thickness of the thinner part, or 40 mm, whichever is less. Okay, and this is for the end return part that I already discussed about the physical reasoning about why we require the end return part. And obviously, when we talk about the end return part, this end return, this is called a return. From the end, it is called the return. This end return always to be provided 2 times of the d, or 2 times of d. This d stands for 2 times of the size of the weld. Okay. It is being observed in the practical scenario that many designers used to avoid this kind of end return, but to be frank enough, that this end return are required to be provided in order to ensure that there is no stress concentration or huge jump in the stresses are been happening over there. Okay. Next, we need to find it out what is the effective area of the weld. Okay. Effective area of the weld. Okay, before going to the effective area of the weld, let me just put another one thing, that when we have this kind of welding situation, let's say for example in B, this is one particular set of weld is being running from one end to the certain portion of the, then there is a gap. What is this gap? This gap is again small s, or the leg size, or the weld size. Then another one fillet weld is being starting. So this kind of configuration of the welding is called the intermittent weld. And this intermittent weld also have certain specifications over there, that how much length to be provided at minimum. This L to be at least greater than equal to 4 times of S. This D is basically nothing but it is the S. I made it here some different notation, and I don't know how did I make it. Or otherwise, this L to be at least minimum 40 mm to make this intermittent weld. And this intermittent weld kind of configuration gives you a particular control over shrinkage and the distortion. Next, we will be coming to this effective area of the weld. What is meant by the effective area? Effective area of, let's say for example, any weld, either the groove weld or the fillet weld, is nothing but the product of the effective throat thickness TE, times or multiplied by the effective length of the weld. Now, for example, in this groove welding, this particular configuration, this is entirely for the groove welding. Groove weld. All these are for the groove weld. In this particular groove weld, you may encounter that there are many different notations are being specified over here. For example, in figure A, there is a 2 different thickness of the member is being connecting together. So what could be the throat thickness? Throat thickness could be the minimum of the thickness of the thinner part. Okay. Now from the calculation point of view, what we require, or let's say for example, if I have a V groove, or if I have a J groove or U groove, then the throat thickness should be at least, if I have a V groove, if I have a J groove, if I have a, let's say, U groove, then this throat thickness to be equated to the 7/8 times of the thickness of the thinner part which is being joined. In other cases, like for example, in other different groove welding cases, it can be easily considered the thickness of the thinner part. But here is a one catch, that this is the thing that actually you have to specify in your drawing. But while making the calculation of the throat thickness, you have to be specified with the 5/8 times of the thickness of the thinner part. And why we have saying it is a T, both the T are same, because we are basically making both the thickness of the plate are of the same size. So the thickness of the thinner part is becoming coming over here. Now similarly for the other cases, if I have a bevel joint, or if I have a bevel or V joint in other different context, then accordingly the your effective throat thickness is differing from one to other. So all these different specifications are already been postulated. You need not be worrying about that. It is already been specified and we are basically utilizing those specifications. Similarly for the fillet weld, those are for the groove weld. Similarly for the fillet weld, FILLAT. Similarly for the fillet weld, if both the leg size are same, the throat thickness TE, effective throat thickness TE is, let's say this is A or this is S and this is also A or S. Then this throat thickness TE would be equated to the, you can calculate easily from here. If there is an unequal leg size, then also you can calculate from this particular way. Effective throat thickness of a fillet weld in any context should not be less than, at any context should not be less than 3 mm or should not greater than 0.7 times of S. Okay. And it can go up to the, should not greater than, it can go up to the 1.0 times S for under very special circumstances. You may also find it out different kinds of your fillet weld. Sometimes it is being called as a convex fillet weld. What is this dotted line? These dotted line are basically nothing but that it is being saying that how to calculate this throat thickness or how to identify throat thickness. If it is in a concave section, then how to define the throat thickness over here. Okay, for example, any other different fusion angle, that what are the throat thickness to be. In general, already IS 800 it has been tabulated. Let's say, for example, if the angle of fusion faces, let's say 60 degree to 90 degree, then this effective throat thickness, this factor becomes 0.7. If it is a 91 degree to 100 degree, then it becomes 0.65. So effective throat thickness in general, effective throat thickness for any fillet weld in general to be specified like this way: K times size of weld. Now this K basically varies from the angle of fusion faces. For 60 degree to 90 degree, generally this K to be equal to 0.7, then 0.65, then 0.6, 0.65, then 0.6. Likewise, it comes into the picture. Okay. Now, regarding the concave and convex weld, by appearance, you may see that this concave fillet weld seems to be the larger than the convex fillet weld. However, it can be easily seen by inspecting both the things together that the concave fillet weld has less penetration. Concave fillet weld has less penetration than compared to the convex fillet weld. That is why the convex fillet weld will be more stronger than the concave fillet weld. The next is coming in the bolted joint. We have encountered one thing that is called the long joint. In the welded joint, how do we define this long joint? Long joint means we have in the bolted connection, that was a certain factors were there to give the reduction factor for making the design capacity or design strength of the bolt. Here also, how do we specify the long joint? We can specify the long joint in the way that if the maximum length of the weld exceeds 150 times the thickness of the effective throat thickness or 150 times the throat thickness of the or the throat size of the weld, then this is to be termed as the long joint, and accordingly clause number 10.5.7.3 to be applied to make the calculation of the strength or the design strength or the design capacity of the weld. Now here in this particular slide, I have given you typical example problems over here. Let's say, for example, how to make the design stress for any sort of your weld. If the weld material is having the ultimate strength of 410 MPa, then for the direct design method, the design stress, you can other way around, you can calculate from here. In the welding, it entirely depends on which electrodes we are being utilizing. The design strength, already we have seen the formula. Design strength of that formula is nothing but Fu by square root of 3 times gamma MW. Now Fu you are providing 410 over here, and this is, let's say, 1.25 if it is shop welding, and to be equal to 1.5 if it is a site welding. Depending on that, you can find it out what are the design capacity of the design stress. After making this, you can make that what is the total capacity of the fillet weld, if it is a shop weld or if it is a site weld. So these are the ready-made tables are being provided over here, and you can easily find it out by doing the easy calculations. Similar way, you can find it out once the design strength is being find it out, then the design capacity to be calculated per unit length. Now the thing is, please remember the per unit length of the welded joint. Okay, that is the design capacity you have to find it out. So what is the formula? 0.7 times of the size of the weld times the weld design strength divided by 1000. It would be giving you the design capacity per unit length of the fillet weld, or the design capacity design capacity of the fillet weld per unit length. And it also depends on different leg length. I don't know whether any other particular codal provisions like ACI or any other places it has been available or not, but depending on the different electrodes and all, you can easily evaluate that what are the, these are the, after making the calculation, I'm just showing you that how to make the entire calculation for the design capacity of the weld. Similarly, whatever we have seen for the previous cases for the connection of the bolt. Now, when we come to the design of the truss member. Design of the truss member is having, in the welded connection, is having 3 different components. What are the different components? First one is the, what is the weld size. Second one is the, what is the weld length. Okay, and third one, obviously it would be specified. That is what I am just striking it out, that what electrode it has been utilized, or what is the ultimate strength of the weld material. Now over here in this particular schematic, you may end up with certain things, that why it is being showing the center of gravity. This is the angle section, this is the gusset plate. and on the angle section a force T is being provided. So what exactly do we require? We require that how much is the length of this weld? How much is the length of this weld? Let's say it is a 3 mm weld or the 5 mm weld. Now your force has been applied along the CG. Your weld length, let's say this is the LW1, this is LW2, length of the weld 1, length of the weld 2, and this is, let's say, length of the weld 3. You have to specify or you have to make the weld length in such a way that the CG, center of gravity of the weld, should coincide with the center of gravity of the plate itself. Otherwise, what would happen? You will be getting a lever arm over there, and once you get the lever arm, your moment would start developing. So on the top portion, I can easily do the welding for the entire length itself. But if I do that entire length itself, then what I am going to make? I am going to make the CG over here, CG of the weld over here. So there is a lever arm between the CG of the weld and CG of the applied force. So this eccentricity actually develops a couple, and that couple we are basically not including in our design. So in order to ensure that the entire structure would be subjecting only the axial force, we have to make ensure the CG of the weld length should be placed in a way that it coincides with the CG of the applied force. Okay, otherwise you will have the problem over here. And the calculation of that is pretty simple. Only the geometry and the equilibrium of the different forces that you require. Okay, so if you are going with that, then perhaps we may end up with a very good design solution problem where we may what we actually presume to have. Next part is the single-sided welding tension. If you look into these particular different cases, let's say case 1, this is, let's say, case 2, same amount of force is being applied. Okay. In the case 1, only one side it is being welded. In the case 2, both the sides are being welded. This welding is basically unsatisfactory. Why it is being unsatisfactory? Because again, the coinciding of the CG actually matters over here, will matter over here. If I look into this particular plan view, then only one side of the weld is being there, but this side also to be applied the welding. Otherwise, it is unsatisfactory in the many different contexts. So there is a which is unsatisfactory and which is satisfactory. It depends. Actually, it depends and on the way that how you are making or placing the weld. Okay, how you are making or how you are placing the weld. Right. So let me just go to the next. Yes. Here, this is a typical connection. Typical connection means, let's say, for example, this is a column, one of the column member, which is to be connected with a beam or which is to be support a beam. How can we make the connection? We can make the connection through the bolted connection, through the in-plane connection or through the out-of-plane connection. Okay. Now, in the in-plane connection or out-of-plane connection, what we do on the flange itself, we generally use to provide certain bolts. Okay. Is there any other way to make the connection? Yes, there is any other way also. What are the other ways? Other ways are, this is a single entity, the beam. Column is also a single entity. Okay, we are not bolting together at here with the beam and column. What we are going to make, we are making another one entity as an angle section. We are making another one entity, an angle. This angle is called the seat angle or the sitting angle. Sitting angle. Okay. So what is meant by the sitting angle? Sitting angle means over this angle the beam is being sitting and the bolts are being placed or being connected with this angle to the column, and similar way the bolts are being connected from one of the leg of that angle with the beam. So this is called sitting angle seat connection or sitting angle connections. Okay, same thing it can be done with the welding also. In the welding we do over here, this is one of the weld we make from the angle with the column, and here with the angle and the beam. At the bottom also, here I have not provided at the bottom the welding at here, but it also to be provided. So this entire configuration is termed as the seat angle connection or the sitting angle connection. It can be either utilized through the bolted connection or it can be either utilized through the welded connections. Okay. Now there are several issues are being coming over here. When we do this kind of connection, let's say here I am not providing any bolts. So what would happen? This particular face is free. So once the load is being applied onto the beam, what would happen? This particular flange or the angle, leg of the angle, try to make buckle, and the point of rotation would be applied at this bolt section. So these to be considered as the critical section then. The critical section means the point of rotations. Now, in order to avoid that, what we can make it, if we are making this kind of connection, the bolts are being placed over here. So in that particular way, the critical section would be developed not at the column, but at the beam itself. So our earthquake engineering philosophy, that strong column weak beam theory, because once the column is being failed or the critical section is being developed on the column, that means a plastic hinges being developed on the column. So if the plastic hinge has been developing over here, then the thing is, if the column is developing the plastic hinge, then the entire mechanism would develop. And here, if it is being developing onto the beam, then similar, only the beam portion would be developed at the critical section or the failure plane, and there perhaps there might not be any catastrophic action of the failure. Okay, might not be the catastrophic action of the failure. Similarly, over here in the critical section develops over there. Here I have shown only one particular path. I am not showing the other direction. So in the welded connection also the similar philosophy could be developed in this particular way for making the flexural design. Next, it is coming about the beam splicing. What is meant by the splicing? Splicing means if the member length is too short, then we are basically adding the member onto one another, and thereby we are making the entire structure itself. So that is how, you know, that if I want to make a 5-story building structure in the RCC, what is the length of the reinforcement? One particular bar, how much length it will be? Let's say it is a 5 meter maximum, but I have to make a 5-story building. 5-story building means it is each story is about 3 meters, so total 15 meter length of the reinforcement bar is required. So we basically do the joining, lap joining, and also we develop the development length. Here also, none of the member would be the actual length, whatever you desire over there. So you have to, by at any point of time, you have to make some adjoining member together. So that is called a splicing. Okay. So how do we do the splicing? Splicing can be done either through the bolting or through the weld, either through the lap joint or through the butt joint. Okay. So this is one of the configuration where we can make the fillet weld or make utilize of the fillet weld to make the beam splicing. Similarly, we can make the column splicing also. Now, before going to the column splicing, this is something like a hybrid splice connection. Hybrid splice connection means both the bolts are being available as well as in one side the welding is also being available. So this is called the hybrid splicing. Okay, on the web, in one particular portion, it is the welding. The same part it is coming when it is going to the flange, then it is the reverse direction to make the balancing between the different forces or development of the forces. I will be ending off with today's lecture by showing this particular figure. Let's say we have a different kinds of structure or different kinds of connection. Bolted connection as well as the welded connection. And here are the typical stress distribution of different kinds of joints. You'll not be surprised, I believe, that during the welded connection, we generally used to get a uniform kind of distribution of the stress. Uniform kind of distribution of the stresses, except at the ends. Because at the ends we have seen that already there is a certain jump or certain increase in stresses. But in the bolted joint, at every bolt you will have a very uneven amount of distribution of the stresses. So in that particular context, welded joint are to be considered as more rigid and to be the I would not say it is the safer, because both the things would be safer if you are going for the actual design. But in one particular case, if the stress distribution is uniform, our design protocol and all these things would be very easy. In another context, we may require several kinds of factors to be included over there to make the things in a bit safer positions. Okay, with this, I am ending it off, and in the next class on Wednesday, next Friday, and Wednesday means it is on 23rd, 25th, and 28th. Sanjay Chikarmani will be taking the class about the in-plane connection and out-of-plane connection using the weld. Okay, and then on 30th or next Wednesday, I'll again be continuing over there. Okay, so with this, I'm ending it off. If you have any question, please pose over there. So I'll try my best to give you the answer over here. So if you don't have any question, so I'm just closing it. Thank you very much.